Welcome everyone to the House of Peregrine podcast. Today I am extremely excited to introduce you to Arielle Tucker. Arielle is a European-based cross-border financial planner, and she is joining us today to talk about Americans who would like to move abroad or who are living abroad. Arielle, thank you so much for coming on. Please introduce yourself to our community.
Thank you so much for having me. So yes, like you said, I am a cross-border financial planner. I actually am an American. We were just talking about how we are both U.S. citizens, and I live in Zurich, Switzerland right now. I've also spent some time living in Berlin and then also the Munich area in Germany. And so now I've been abroad for like 12-ish years. It goes by fast. Like you kind of wake up and you're like, wow, I'm really building a life abroad here. But I first moved abroad professionally back in 2011. We moved to Switzerland. My husband at that time was doing his PhD, and he said, I got this Swiss National Science Foundation. I think we should move to Switzerland so I can do my PhD. And I was like, me being like the numbers one, I was like, okay, well, how much would it cost and how much are they paying you? And oh, wait, they're going to pay you like a somewhat livable wage for you to do your PhD versus if we had stayed at, Boston or moved out to California. I was like, oh, the numbers work so much better to move to Switzerland. Let's go there. And so we moved here, and I had a bit of tax experience. I love taxes. I find them really interesting. It's a story of people's financial lives, for the year. And so I had done some tax work.
Arielle. It's a dark art. Like, I am so glad people like you exist. This is great.
I do. I find it so interesting. And so when we were moving to Switzerland, I needed to get a job, right? I wasn't doing a PhD. And so I needed to find a job. And when we moved to Zurich in 2011, it was kind of this really interesting time because FATCA was kind of blowing up in Switzerland. You hear about secret Swiss bank accounts and things like that. And at that time, all of the banks were having to come into compliance and basically report back to the US government, hey, who has a secret Swiss bank account? What's going on in that account? And so there was a lot of tax work for the US tax system at that time. And so basically every bank, all the big four, they were like desperate for anyone who had seen a 1040. And so I had seen a 1040. So I found a job at PwC working on the international tax team. That's really how I started my career. At that time, I didn't know about cross-border financial planning. But after working in tax for a few years, I very quickly realized, okay, we are doing tax returns for people. And tax return is a report of what happened the year before, but we're not really doing any planning. And people would come to us like, wait, I have this giant balance due to the US. I live in Switzerland. Why do I owe additional tax to the US government? And we would have to explain, okay, well, this is, there was no tax planning. There was no thinking about how much are you paying this year? How much do you think you're going to pay next year? How much are you going to pay in 10 years? Where are you moving after Switzerland? And that is like the planning piece that I just started getting a bit excited about. And so I was really lucky that my mentor there was like, you should go and become a financial planner. And so that's kind of the path that I took. Yeah.
So I want to back up and do a little bit so I would just like to say to our audience that this is very US based. It's very US specific, but a lot of our community is US based, and it is a very specific tax position. Is that a way to put it? If you live abroad?
Yes.
Simply because the US you still are liable for taxes in US, which is rather rare, not the only country, but it's rarer to have to pay tax in a country you're not living in at the time. And sometimes it leads to double taxation if you're not careful, despite all the treaties and everything. So you really have to be strategic. And so at House of Peregrine, we're always telling our community, you need to have a team around you, because this is not the way the world works for people to live in different countries. And it's not the way the system's set up. So you have to have your own team. And so a financial planner is one of those team members that we recommend for people even before they leave the country, even when they're thinking about it. Talk to someone. Just talk to someone. It could save you. It could help you plan. It could just make your life just way less stressful. And so you work with Americans specifically who want to or are living abroad to plan their finances so that they have less surprises, because there's just surprises. I don't know. Is that
Yeah, I get surprises sometimes, and I'm a planner. I plan. So thank you so much for taking a moment to highlight basically the plight of the US person, right? And when I say US person, because it's not just US citizens, it's also US green card holders. You still have to maintain those reporting requirements back to the US, even if you don't live in the US. And that's because the US has citizenship based taxation. We don't have residence-based taxation, which is what all of Europe has, and like you said, like 99% of the world has residence-based taxation. You live in a country, you file taxes in that country, you pay taxes to that country, and you're done. But with the US, it's like, okay, you are a US citizen, you now live in Germany or the Netherlands or Switzerland. You file your local country of residence, and then you go and file your US tax return. Like you said, there's a lot of treaties out there. There's a lot of ways to plan around eliminating or reducing double taxation, but there are still areas where we see that are really problematic for US citizens, because they're essentially, like, in a lot of ways, especially in Europe, they're essentially just wearing handcuffs, right? They can't really get into the local financial system because they're US citizens, and the US and the local country is very aware, okay, we're gonna have to report everything, and you're gonna cause tax issues. There are tax issues from investing locally oftentimes. And then from a US perspective, it's like your old bank, a local bank, is like, well, you don't live in this country, we can't support you. And so you kind of are wearing handcuffs a lot of the times. And so our job a lot of times is to just walk alongside our clients and help them do the planning. And you're absolutely right. The clients who call us a year or two before they move, oh, I love those clients. So they're my favorite clients, because then we can really do our best planning work, especially for those people who are moving to high tax countries. So if you're moving from, maybe you're moving from Florida, you have no state tax, you only have to think about federal tax rates. Your federal tax rates on the US side are going to be lower than if you move to, the Netherlands or Germany. So there's tax planning that you can do before you hit those higher tax rates. And then we support, obviously, a lot of clients come to us and they thought, oh, we were just going to move abroad, it was going to be fun for 2 or 3 years. We've woken up and we've been here for 7 years, and oh my gosh, we're not going back. What do we do now?
You've just described me. I was like, oh, we were here for a year. It's suddenly been 8. We don't know our plan. And so now, and we've started businesses as entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's like a whole nother thing.
Yeah. So I think you just stick with the personal side, right? That's something we should clarify. Like,
yeah. So I kind of have a few countries that I really specialize in. And when you're looking for a cross-border financial planner, I would look for someone who specializes in a couple countries, right? Because we have to stay completely on top of everything that's happening on the US
in
side,
both countries.
And then we also have to stay on top of everything that's happening on the local country side. That's a lot to keep. And if you interview someone and they say, I do every country, we can figure it out, I say, I don't know. So I really try to specialize. So we do support business owners, but only in limited countries. So if you're a business owner in Switzerland or Germany, we will support you. But generally outside of that, there are a lot of additional considerations. I say, we got to kind of be careful. But we support personal situations throughout Europe. We don't do the UK. There's a really unique treaty with the UK. So we look for UK experts to send. If you're an expat, you're moving to a country, you have a true expat contract, meaning you are basically still have your US contract. You still are making US Social Security contributions, from K contributions, often your tax equalized, and you're moving to Europe for that, limited amount. We'll often support those cases throughout Europe. So we really look at every case on a case-by-case basis and how we can best support the families we work with.
Yeah. And so if I could break that down a little bit, when you move abroad, you could do it a number of ways. So there's literally, you can just get on a plane, fly here, but you would be on a visa so you do have to apply for a visa if you're going to come longer. But the way that you're taxed, or the way your money moves, is maybe you have to know which way it's moving. So as you said, if you're coming over on your same contract, you're basically not really entering the money system of the country you're in as much. So you're kind of shielded. You would handle that person a certain way. Usually that's a temporary move, certain amount of time.
And there's some really exciting planning opportunities. For example, your country puts you're living in the US, and your company says, we would like you to move as an expat to Germany for 3 years. Would you like that as an opportunity? That's actually an amazing planning opportunity, because Germany cost of living is in a lot of ways a lot lower than it is in the US. Expats usually come with a lot of benefits, and oftentimes you're tax equalized. So you may pay like the same US tax rate that you were paying, but now we've lowered your cost of living and you live in the heart of Europe. It can be a great deal.
Yeah. So I just want to go back also and just go over the countries you do cover so that people, if they're listening, they can know. So Switzerland, obviously, Germany, you said. And are those the two, the two that you...
We do. I mean, again, we look at everything on a case by case basis. We do have some clients in the Netherlands. We have some clients in Belgium, in the Czech Republic. But I look at the situation really on a case by case basis to determine, do we have the expertise to handle that client or not? I think the big one to know is, again, we don't do the UK. I do France sometimes if it's the person is working in Switzerland. But generally, like French business, I don't do that. We don't really do Italy. We have wonderful partners who handle those countries. And so we are happy to refer that work out to them.
Nice. Actually, so someone could contact you if they're thinking of moving to Europe, maybe even if they have if they're country shopping, which I know sounds terrible, but if they're like, okay.
We absolutely have people who are like, I want to move to Europe. And I'm like, okay, so we got to narrow that down a little bit. But we actually even just launched, because we've had so much demand, especially post-election, where people are just like, they feel like they just want more information. And so we have just launched basically a 45-minute paid consult. You just have questions and you're not even sure where to start. I will get on the phone with you and we will just do a paid consult and just kind of discuss what are the things that you should even be thinking about, because it can be really overwhelming. But as a first step, I always say, if you haven't traveled a lot in Europe, start taking vacations to Europe.
Yeah.
Like, let's start there before we pack our suitcases.
Yep. So I want to tell a little bit about my story. So this is what not to do. So we talked about the US contract, Then there's the case where you're location independent with your work, your family, that's a goal of yours. Maybe for us it was like, hey, we had a deal within our marriage that we would move away from Salt Lake City, which is where I grew up, by the time my oldest son was 5. Before he entered school, I wanted to know where our next spot would be. And so on his 5th birthday, we moved here, but we had 2 months notice. So we just left, came, we got a visa, we were working with the government here, and then we landed. We didn't do anything financially. We didn't do anything. We had nothing. So then when a few years passes, we had little kids, we were just enjoying ourselves. We were working. My partner he had a company back in the US. So such a complicated financial picture. But then I was just in the US. I just needed a driver's license. I just needed to renew my driver's license. And they said, oh, would you like to register to vote? And I was like, sure. I'll get that done too. So then a year later, we were looking with our accountant and they said, oh, you have residency in Utah still. We should probably consider, because you haven't lived there for nearly 8 years. And they said, oh, but they went down the list. And I was like, yes, I've done all those things. And they're like, now you need to wait longer to move your state of residency. And so with a little planning, I would have known not to renew my driver's license and to be able to optimize, because it's not that I don't want to pay taxes, it's that we want to optimize and not pay double, right? That's really, I think, the goal of most people. It's not like you're trying to avoid taxes. It's like you want to be smart about it and the system is not made for you.
Yes. And that's where I live. People want to do the right thing. Like, we don't want to work with clients who are not compliant, right? We don't work with those clients. They want to do the right thing, but they want to do it in the most fair way, because it's not really a fair system, right? It's like you're still kind of like stuck to the US system, even though you're not living there and you do nothing. And you're still like, okay, why do I owe you tax then? We're trying to optimize within the system that there is. And there's a lot of ways to optimize within that system.
Yeah. And that little trigger of registering to vote, which is so ironic if you're American and like, it's an emotional thing to register to vote. But you can. You have a legal right to vote in every state is different though. So I don't know the rules off the top of my head with Utah. Every state has like rules to determine like, are you considered a resident or not? So that might be what's going on here. And that is an important thing to note, right? How aggressive is your state? Some states are very aggressive, right? New York, California, I'm thinking like top of mind of those states. They will send you letters and you're like, you'll get these letters and they sound so scary. And then you're like, oh, don't be scared, right? There's a process.
have the right team in place to navigate the process. Don't just accept the letter that you receive. Ask questions. But you should be able to register the vote to vote in all federal elections. You have that right as a U.S. Citizen, but not all states allow you to vote in the local elections.
No. But it showed that I was a tax resident still. It's like one of those things that shows that you're still a tax resident. I can vote all I want, but registering to vote triggered this point system or something that, oh, we really can't make the case
if you still showed center of vital interest, we call it. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. So, but had I known that strategically, I just would have said no, and it would have started helping me out. So these are the types of little tiny things that you just don't know. Why would you know this? If you've maybe lived in the US your whole life and this is your first time living abroad, or when you do it with the company, they sometimes have support. So I would say that's the other kind of person. We have this expat that's supported by a company. Maybe they have their own HR, legal team that's kind of got all the contracts in place. They kind of can tell you, advise you a little bit more. But the way we did it as entrepreneurs was all on our own and did not know. I mean, we knew we should probably talk to somebody, but it just wasn't as strategic as I would have made it. And that's what I always try and advise people, like, talk to an immigration lawyer, talk to a financial planner, just start a relationship. You're going to need it.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. There's just so much to know. And, people are like, well, do you just do it on yourself? No, when we move, like we've moved a bunch of times. And even when we moved from Germany to Switzerland, we already lived in Switzerland for 6 years before coming back into the country. I still hired immigration support. And my husband even had the support. But what I have learned is sometimes when you're just given HR as a US person, you have different hurdles. Like in Europe, oftentimes we're considered third country citizens. So it's like if you're European, right, you're kind of like first tier. And then if you're third country, you're like America, Iraq, India. I mean, we're all kind of like in this lower tier of visas. And so it's really important to advocate. And this is important because especially if you're thinking about being here long term, right? If you get the wrong visa, that could set you back years to get citizenship, right? If they just give you a short term, like special visa. Another thing I see, because I think, I don't know if you're seeing this, getting a second passport, getting an EU passport, like that's the Mercedes of the 90s, right? People want that is a new status symbol. So really thinking about like the citizenship planning and the path to your citizenship, I think is so important, and doing that like early on. If you already are a US and EU citizen, there's still planning opportunities, and you're still a US citizen. You still have to consider like all the US tax headaches. But from a planning perspective of like which countries you go to, there's still a lot of really exciting plannings. Because yes, you could technically just show up in a country and you have a right to be there and work there. But are you getting their most recent like tax incentives? I don't know. If you don't like look into those and proactive, you might miss out. You might just pay more.
Yeah. And we actually just did this big, we're releasing it in a few weeks, of this big deep dive on what to do the day you arrive in the Netherlands for your kids to be able to have more opportunities for getting another passport or having permanent residency. And so it really is worthwhile, even if it seems like, oh, sure, I have to pay a consultation fee. It's just needed. So we always recommend financially, maybe even the same, if not more. I love this idea that so this is how a lot of people that I work with live their life. They either are moving around with a company, that their spouse, or they are following the opportunities for the company and they provide for, school or whatever. But some people are just starting that journey. Do you ever talk to people and help them know what to advocate for if their company is?
Yes. We actually just helped a client actually move to the Netherlands. They were living in New York, fallen in love with someone in the Netherlands, had been like commuting for 2 years. And they basically went to their company and said, I would really like to work remotely in the Netherlands. Okay. Side note, you can't just show up with your US W-2 job and like move to the Netherlands and live there permanently. I'm like, I know people are like, my job says I can work anywhere in the world. Yes, but that does not give you legal right to show up in a country, just like take up residence. So back to the conversation. So the company loved this employee, really valued them. And they were like, okay, so we're going to figure out how to do this. They still hired us to advocate for them. They basically built their own team because they're like, look, my company doesn't know what they're doing. I need to build my own team to make sure that my financial stuff is set up so that when I move into the Netherlands, The company didn't know about the 30% ruling, you
Yep.
know, all of
Yep.
these like little things. So they invested probably $20,000 to go through this process, but we have saved them thousands, like tens of thousands. I mean, that pays dividends because it's setting you up there just to figure out the 30% ruling and how to navigate that. I mean, that for the next 5 years has paid for our service 10x.
Yep. More than 10x. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And just for ease, there's so many, and people only think of the tax benefits of the 30% ruling, but it's also, you can exchange your driver's license. It goes far beyond. You're shielded from some US tax requirements or Netherlands tax. So not only is it money, but it's just comfort that she just got. So or he or she, you didn't say if it was he or she, but yeah. When someone comes to you, I love this idea of being, so in this case, she had a country she wanted to go to. So there's the people that follow their company, but there's also the people like me who are like, I live, and we call this a peregrine, right? We go where suits us best, right? So in my family, we've been here 8 years. It still works for us. Everyone says, how long are you staying? And I always say, as long as it works for the 5 of us. I have 3 kids and two adults in my family. And so that's a big, tall order for 5 people to be happy in a country if you don't have to stay. And so that is how we live our life. And so I think we've talked about this a little bit on the podcast. People in our community are always a flight risk because they're always country shopping. Whether or not they stay for the rest of their life in a country, they are always thinking, what about this? What about this? What about Japan? Mm-hmm. What about Malta? What about this? Mm-hmm. And it's not just for money reasons, it's for lifestyle reasons, it's for values reasons. And so to be able to be strategic about that, say you're like, we have a goal to go live in 3 countries, let's say, while our kids are small. Doing that in the right order might even matter. Is that right?
Yeah. So yeah. I'll give you a great example.
Great.
We had lived in Switzerland before. We moved back to New York for a short time, and then I got a job in Berlin. And so we were moving to a high tax country, right? Switzerland is relatively low for European standards. Germany, no, Germany is a high tax country. So we moved to Germany. When you're in Germany, right, you can start to bank foreign tax credits. And so there's basically 2 big tax opportunities for Americans living abroad. We have the foreign earned income exclusion, which is basically like all Americans, if you have earned income, right, you have job income or self-employment income, you can exclude up to $130,000 of that earned income, not passive income, not investment income. It's earned income, right? And it's per person. So if one partner makes $260,000 and one partner makes 0, you can only exclude $130,000 per person. Okay, so that's the first opportunity. Second opportunity is foreign tax credits. And in some ways you can mix and match these, but for people who live in high tax countries, I love just claiming foreign tax credits because foreign earned income exclusion, it's a use it or lose it, right? You don't use 130,000, you only use 100,000. You can't carry over the 30,000 next year. It's inflation adjusted. It goes up a little bit every year, but right now it's $130,000. Foreign tax credits, on the other hand, if you're living in a high tax country, you can bank those foreign tax credits. Now, bank those credits and then move to a low tax country or a no tax country. We're set. We have a nice bank to draw down. And so tax planning between countries absolutely is very important. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, of course, as soon as you can know, the sooner the better, obviously. But I think I was just speaking, I speak to people every single week. I speak to 2 to 3 people per week for this podcast that they are moving, they've strategized, they have their family goals, and then they lay that on top. So it's almost layering, like your family goals, your personal goals on top of your financial goals, on top of your citizenship goals. And that's what we advocate on this podcast, is basically living your life the way you see fit, of course, within the law, all this stuff. But you don't have to sacrifice for it necessarily if you have the right team around you. So, or have these stressful letters. I mean, we have a lot of jokes in the Netherlands, like these blue envelopes come through the mail. Like if you're if you're a Dutch person, you get maybe 1 or 2 in your lifetime. So it's a big deal. It has the crown on it. It's an official government letter. We get 1 a week. So the blue envelopes coming through the mailbox is like we're just like, yep, here we go again. Not because we're doing something wrong, just because we're doing so much outside the box. They're notifying us. We just don't fit the norm. And that's international people in general. Like if you're living between countries, especially as US citizens, you are literally in 2 systems fully with both feet. And that can become not only financially, but also emotionally draining. And yes. I'm sure you see that in your clients, where it's like just the emotional toll of not knowing or not having a plan can really, really change the way your life is. And so maybe talk a little bit about that and the benefits you see of that.
Yeah, no, I see that all the time. And so actually one of the things that our firm does when we're doing, so we generally work with people on an ongoing basis. And so it's important for us to deeply know who they are. And one of the exercises we do is a value-based exercise where I just ask individuals, actually, even if we're working with a couple, I ask them to prepare it separately, right? Like, and then we'll like reveal, what are your values, and just it's usually like your value, which is the word, and then a sentence that really describes what that means to you. So a lot of people are like family. It's like, well, what does that mean? Sometimes family is your immediate family. Sometimes it's just it's really a close circle of friends who you consider your family. We really want to understand deeply what do those values actually mean and translate, because at the end of the day, I truly believe most people are either going to run out of time or money, right? Time and money are limited. And maybe we're going to have enough money, but time becomes the restraint for a lot of our clients. And so when we have to make these decisions, you're absolutely right. They are so exhausting, right? You move to a country, you have an expat job, and you think that you have a contract for 3 to 5 years. Just had this happen with a client. They sold their house. We packed up. They moved to Germany. He's an executive in Germany. Oh, wow, they're restructuring. And it's like, this is such a big company that they're not considering who is the expat and who just like restarted their life. It's not personal, right? It's a large company. And so, going back to the drawing board and having that uncertainty, it can feel like you're just kind of like really shaken in a foreign country. You don't understand the system. You don't understand your rights. And so we don't do everything right. I'm not an immigration lawyer. So I'm not an employment rights lawyer. So we really make sure we have the right team around our clients to make sure we can navigate a lot of these issues that pop up.
Yeah. And I would say, so we've gone through this exercise a lot with my husband and I. Our goal is freedom. And so that's our main, but that is a really, really difficult one when the tax and immigration system is the way it is. You really have to add in there strategic to actually feel free. Otherwise, you're constantly calculating, you're constantly wondering, you're constantly worrying. And so if you want to be this, for me, having good contacts, having a team around you is the best way to fulfill that value of me living out my value of being free. And so, yeah, we always encourage this. We have an exercise on our website, like how to find your personal values, and then know that you cannot do it alone. Like you can spend hours online.
Yeah.
But I think part of the journey of living internationally is sometimes learning to, well, first of all, use your gut. Your intuition shoots up. Like that's what you have. As you said, you have to get to know your clients very well because you have to advocate for them sometimes. Like it's uncharted waters in some ways between countries, but also it's an exercise in connecting with this network of people that you have on your team. And we're all on the same boat usually, which is really, really fun. And so to close us out, I would really love for you to tell us, maybe give us some tips, some tricks, some things you always recommend to people who come to you, and then how I think people can probably come to you for a consultation or to get to know you, how to do that. I would love for people to know how to learn more, because you're obviously, I love what you're doing. I love your approach that you're taking. And I love that you are helping people live their dreams in a very legal and compliant way. That makes me happy. So tell us a little bit about that to close us out, if you would.
Absolutely. So I'm so passionate about how people like really, how do we optimize our life? And we said that before, but that's really what I'm trying to do. How do you build that best version? And so if it is on your bucket list of like, I want to move abroad at some point, really sit down and start actually like drafting that out. Like what climates, what countries. And I would, again, like I said, start with just vacationing more regularly. Americans are terrible at taking vacations. And I actually had a project like last year, they came to us, we want to move to Portugal. And I was like, awesome, great. Let's get you on vacation there. They went to Portugal. They spent 2 weeks there. They hated it. And they were like, we would never move to Portugal. Now, I'm from upstate New York, and I'm like pretty intense person. I like rules. I like things to work for me. And so I always knew I could never live south of Pennsylvania. Like I consider Pennsylvania the South. And that kind of translates to the countries that I've chosen to live in, Switzerland, Germany. There are there is a system, and if you can work within the system, it works really well. When I start to go on vacation and I'm in like Italy, I'm like so much chaos. Like I can't imagine like living here. Like it just doesn't fit my personality. So finding like which country, so it's like I want to move to Europe. Well, Europe's a big place, and just like in the US, every region and country is so unique. So really getting down and exploring those places. And Americans have so much opportunity because you have the 90 days that you can just come and hang out in Europe, right? So
That's
as
changing.
a next
That's
step,
changing. Yeah.
when does that change? But you can still come. You just have to register. You just have to get
Yeah, you just have to
visa.
register.
It's still
Yeah,
very
yeah.
easy.
It's this now. I think now it's now-ish. You have to get an additional visa. It's online. It's easy, but that made me really sad. But you're right. We have 90 days in a lot of countries.
You could still, it's still very possible and easy to travel for 90 days. So take advantage of that, really explore. The other thing, you and I both have kids, and that is like a whole nother thing. I want to move by the time we were 5. We moved back to Europe, and my thing was I want to move back to a German speaking country before my daughter turned 7 because I didn't want her to have an accent. That's really important. So thinking about timing and how you move with your children is so important. All of those things. Really think about it. Don't just make a gut like, oh, I didn't like who won the election or something. So now we're moving abroad, because you've seen this. You've been here for 8 years. I've been over here for, 12, 13 years now. It's moved right here too. And not to get political, but like the, immigration rules 8 years ago in the Netherlands were very different than they are today. And that translates to a lot of countries. If you look at the programs and the opportunities, right? I always think about like the NHR program, which was like so fabulous in Portugal. Great program. That's closed.
It's gone.
Right.
Yep.
So it's kind of like these whack-a-mole, these programs and countries and opportunities, they're there, but they are changing. Political environments are changing, and that has huge implications on like immigration rules. So there is a lot to consider. Just start making your list and doing your research. And when you're ready, we're here to support you. So we have a couple ways that you can connect. I'm on Instagram, Arielle Tucker Abroad. I also have a podcast, Passport to Wealth, where we just talk about U.S. tax and financial issues for U.S. expats on a more global, general level. And then we have my firm, Connected Financial Planning, which really focuses on holistic financial planning for U.S. expats and their families, or wannabe U.S. expats and their families. I'm sure we can link those in the show notes, but really lots of ways to connect and follow me.
That's great. All right, we'll put everything in the show notes, of course, but I love to hear you say it for those people who don't want to look at their phones. Say the name of your company, Connected Financial Planning.
Yes, Connected Financial Planning is the name of our firm.
And can people reach out? And that you said you have a 45-minute consultation.
Yes. So we basically have 2 ways that we can work with you. So we do offer a complimentary call for individuals who are looking for ongoing financial planning. We're happy to, we do have a bit of a wait list. And so we are always looking for a great fit. Who can we help the most? And then we also have a paid consult. And so the paid consult is great for people who are just like getting started and they are looking for a sounding board on like, what are the next steps that I need to do? So we really get into what are your immediate questions? How can I answer those? What are the resources that I can provide you with so that you can kind of continue that research on your own?
Yeah, that's great. It's when you get stuck. That's what happens. You get stuck and go, what about this, this, and this? And then you can come and chat. That is amazing. So we'll link to that as well. Thank you so much. I'm going to have you on again because I think we just barely scratched the surface.
Oh my God, anytime. I love talking about this stuff if you can't tell.
I can tell and I love it. So that is amazing because I think, again, our podcast listeners aren't all American, but we do have a big following of Americans. And it is a very unique position that I've been in myself. And so I think it does take support, coming around, resources, team, and a really good handle on what you're dealing with. And also maybe it's a little bit fun to be able to plan your life in a way that you're playing a game in a way instead of what it seems like, which is a little bit of a burden sometimes.
Can you imagine you and your partner or you sitting down and just allowing time to plan out your future and getting excited about it and getting the tools and resources to a lot of the work we do sometimes is just giving people permission.
Yep.
You can do this.
Yep.
You can do this.
If you want to live abroad, you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Arielle. I really appreciate it. And thanks for coming on. We'll see you again and enjoy your day.
Thank you so much.